You have to learn how to have productive conflict in order to grow your marriage. And that's going to be a running theme for the rest of this podcast. Because if you want to grow your marriage, you have to put more truth on the table, which often means confronting difficult and uncomfortable things. Welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. I'm your host, Dan Purcell, a Christian marriage and intimacy expert and coach. I'm on a mission to help couples have the best sex and most emotionally intimate marriages possible. Our episodes cover topics you've always wondered about and are packed with practical advice designed to help you take your marriage to the next level. Hello and welcome to episode number 163 of the Get Your Marriage On podcast. I'm your host, Dan Purcell, and I hope you and your family have had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And I'm so happy to be spending these next half hour or so with you today. Today is a Q&A episode. So I get anonymous questions, which you can send me through my website at getyourmarriageon.com. Under more, there's a link where you can submit a question anonymously to me. And I go through those regularly. And today we're going to address a few of the common questions that I'm getting in this podcast episode. Today we're going to cover topics such as, like, from a newlywed, how to get more comfortable with flirting, dirty talk, wearing lingerie, and so forth. Another question on how do you ask for things in bed? We're going to address premature ejaculation. Another concern from a wife about how her husband has some excessive masturbation habits, it seems like. And lastly, how do you talk about difficult things with your spouse when they tend to shut down and withdraw? All that's coming up in today's episode. Now I have a very special invitation for you. You're invited to join us for our next marriage retreat that we'll have here in my hometown, St. George, Utah. St. George, Utah is like a mecca for outdoor living. It's got red rocks, it's in the desert, it's got world-renowned canyons like the Zion National Park and Snow Canyon. We're going to spend some of that time outside ATVing in the desert or canyoneering out by the national parks. We'll also have this beautiful location that we've picked out. It's private. We've rented out the entire resort. And you get to have instruction with me and my team. We do a deep dive in your relationship, taking it apart, putting it back together, and upgrading your marriage. Make this time in March be the thing that will give you forward momentum in your relationship to build a strong you in 2024. We only have 20 spots for this, so the time to act is now. You can register at getyourmarriageon.com and click on Couples Retreat. And while you're there, look at some of the testimonials and videos of others that have attended the retreat so you get an idea for what it's like. All right, here's the first question. My husband and I are newlyweds, but even in our second year of marriage, I cannot bring myself to flirt with him, talk dirty, wear lingerie, etc. Makes me feel physically sick to think of doing these things. I am very much in love with him, but I'm having a hard time transitioning from courtship mode to doing physical things. I thought I would naturally feel more comfortable by now, but that's not the case, and I can tell he is disappointed. Please help. By the way, your concern is very normal. Flipping that switch is difficult for a lot of people. Before you're married, you're not supposed to, and now that you're married, you're allowed to, and it's just kind of confusing. That transition is very difficult for a lot of people. So I'm going to give you some ideas on how you can overcome this and help you kind of transition better if you find that helpful. By the way, you mentioned your husband is disappointed, and I understand he is disappointed. He would want more from you because, you're married now. But I just want to caution that a disappointed husband isn't a sufficient motivation for change. You're going to find your best growth when you decide that you want it for yourself, not just to please your husband. So to do that, you just need to define for yourself who you want to be in this marriage or what you want this marriage to be like. Do you want this marriage to be about staying in courtship mode? Or do you want something a little more meaningful, something more intimate, something more real, something more honest? I want you to define it for yourself and decide for yourself what this marriage is going to be. You can also decide if lingerie, dirty talk, and flirting is your style. It may not be. But you don't have to like the things that others say that you should like. Although sometimes you might want to experiment with lingerie, dirty talk, and flirting just to see if you really like it or not. There's a great story in the movie Runaway Bride. The main character is Maggie Carpenter. She's played by Julia Roberts. If you don't know the story, I won't spoil it for you. It's a great movie. But this woman has lots of engagements, and on the marriage day, she always backs out and runs away. And one of the storylines in it is the main character, Maggie, she changes her mind on how she likes her eggs cooked. And it really depends on her boyfriend at the time. If her boyfriend likes them scrambled, she likes them scrambled. If her boyfriend likes them fried, she likes them fried. And finally, she meets a man that really challenges her. How do you like your eggs? And she has to really decide how she likes her eggs for herself, not based on how her boyfriend likes the eggs cooked. It's a profound lesson on defining for yourself what you want and what you want your marriage to be like. Because once you make that decision, I don't want my marriage to stay in courtship mode forever. I really want it to be something more meaningful, something more physically safe and comfortable. Then you got to decide that, and then you'll organize and kind of move forward there. Unfortunately, for a lot of couples, it takes a crisis for them to wake up to the fact that they got to make those changes. I hope for you, a crisis doesn't happen first, but you can, organize and self-motivate yourself now to have a marriage that's more meaningful for both of you. Here's a few more tips. Remember that everything to do with physical intimacy is a learned behavior. It doesn't just naturally come. And that's kind of a misconception that a lot of us have, that once I'm married, I'll just naturally want to flirt or wear lingerie and those kinds of things. No, it's a learned behavior, although some people do learn it faster than others. The biggest tip I have in that learned behavior is to just do it. You live your way to a new way of thinking, not think your way to a new way of living. We're embodied persons. We're about action and behavior. So if you change your behavior and your actions, your way of thinking about things will change too. I recommend focusing on little small baby steps rather than take a big giant step. For example, if wearing lingerie is a big giant step and it's very scary for you, can you take a little baby step and maybe just undress a little bit more? Or maybe it's in your regular underwear instead of fancy lingerie? Or can you wear lingerie but with the lights dim? Or can you wear lingerie that you pick out that where you feel more comfortable in, and then kind of move up a little bit like that? When you focus on taking the small steps rather than feeling so daunted about the big gap ahead of you, it'll actually help you in the long run. When I ran my first marathon, which is a really long race, it's 26 miles of running, I was feeling really tired and gassed, and I still had miles to go. When I thought about how many miles I have left to go, and estimating in my head how many more minutes or hours I have yet to run before I hit the finish line, it was really defeating. But if instead I could focus on, I can run to that tree, or I can run to that turn, or I can run to that aid station. In other words, I kind of shortened my lens of where I needed to run to. I can go that far, and I'd run to that. Then I'd pick the next target. I can run that far. So that's the process you can take to baby step your way into feeling more comfortable about things. But you need to push yourself in that direction. My last tip is to find more Eros energy in your life. Eros energy is that life-giving energy. It's what gives you a pep in your step, a smile on your face, the things that really make you feel come alive. And the more of that you have in your life, you can channel that energy into your marriage. Is it art? Is it dancing? Is it having a deep conversation with a friend? Is it hiking? Is it yoga? Is it cooking? Is it solving a big challenge? Is it a home project? Is it visiting with the elderly? What is it that gives you a sense of life and energy that makes life worth living? What challenges do you like to tackle? Anyway, if you fill your life with more of this Eros energy, it'll bleed into your marriage and make it easier for you to move beyond that stuck in courtship mode and into really enjoying all of the benefits that marriage can provide you. All right, here's the next question. A husband writes, I struggle with feelings of shame around my sexuality. My wife loves me and I love her. My only complaint is that I have no control in what we do or don't do in the bedroom. When I express a desire to do something, I feel guilty for asking to try something new. There have been several times where I haven't wanted to have sex or have an orgasm, but she did. She doesn't like vibrators or sex toys and says that my penis is the only thing that gets her going. I struggle with that because I can't avoid ejaculation if she wants an orgasm. Most everything I read is written from a woman's perspective and can't find something that will help me. How can I ask for what I want without feeling shame? What free resources are out there that can help me? I'm glad you asked this question, and I get this a lot from men saying, everything out there is written for women. What about me? And I get it. That's kind of why I am doing this podcast. So hopefully this is a resource that will help you in your situation here. I'm just reading between the lines here a little bit from what you wrote, but I sense that you feel a lot of pressure to perform in the bedroom, especially when your wife says and only wants your penis, and that's the only way that she gets off. So there's a lot of pressure for you to perform for her benefit, and at the same time, she doesn't seem very flexible to allow for other ways of stimulation. So it puts an enormous amount of pressure on you if you want to fulfill her sexual desires. And what makes it difficult is in the process of trying to fulfill her, you ejaculate, and so you feel like a failure. And then she feels like a failure in the sexual experience too. So you're both leaving the sexual encounter frustrated. And I think that's what you mean by shame in this area. You have shame around your sexuality because you're thinking you're inadequate for her. And if every time you have sex with your wife, you feel less than or incapable of really being man enough for her, let's use that term, of course you're going to feel shame or some sort of inadequacy around your sexual performance. So if those are the meanings at play in sex, of course you're going to want to avoid it or look for other things. Now, I've had a few questions on premature ejaculation, which I think ties into your question here. So I want to address that real quick. Premature ejaculation is probably the most common complaint I hear from men about their sexual dysfunction. And if you're curious, we have an entire 90-minute workshop on my website that you can get the replay of that, where we do a deep dive on premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, and delayed ejaculation for men. These are male sexual dysfunctions. So you can get that to get a deeper dive. But let me give you a high level, some practical strategies for you if you want to last longer in bed. Easy things to try is, first of all, ejaculate earlier in the day on your own, for example, so that when you do have sex, you last a little longer. Because when you ejaculate earlier in the day, it's harder to ejaculate as quick the second time in the day, making you last longer. You can also buy products like delay sprays that kind of temporarily numb the nerves so you don't get as much physical stimulation. That tends to help men last longer. You can also wear a condom, which kind of lessens the sensation, and there's other alternatives there kind of along those lines. But my guess is in this case, your premature ejaculation, if that's what we want to call it, is probably more psychological. You're tense, you're anxious, and you really can't relax fully into the sexual experience because you're too worried about coming too soon and ruining your wife's experience. So you both end up not enjoying it. So you gotta address that first. All the sprays and condoms or whatever aren't going to really help you in that. You gotta address the anxiety. And I'm also just guessing here, but I'm guessing that your fantasies that you want to share with your wife, or the new things that you want to try in your bedroom with your wife, revolve around not making your penis performance part of sex. My guess is you're interested in things like oral sex and using toys or encouraging her to touch herself. That's my guess. And it would make sense because those are going to be really appealing for you because it takes out the performance pressure that you experience in it, right? Because your fantasy of a great sexual experience is one where you both feel free and relaxed, and it's not all this pressure to perform in a certain way for her. So that's probably why you have those fantasies. Now, in your question, you ask, how can I ask for the things I want without shame? Perhaps a better question to ask is, how can I be more honest and truthful with your wife? Now, this is going to feel like pulling off a Band-Aid. You have to learn how to have productive conflict in order to grow your marriage. And that's going to be a running theme for the rest of this podcast. Because if you want to grow your marriage, you have to put more truth on the table, which often means confronting difficult and uncomfortable things. So, here are some specific action steps I have for you. I recommend that you set aside some time to talk to your wife, preferably not right before a sexual encounter that you're about to have. So not like when you're kissing and making out. Set aside time to talk to your wife about this. Start with what is going well, if that helps you establish the right tone you want in this conversation. And then explain your frustrations honestly. And what you want to do is get more truth on the table. And remember this counsel from Stephen Covey in the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He says, you want to seek to understand and then be understood. So you're going to express what you want and put as much truth as you can on the table. but you really want to lean in and try to understand what the other person says. And then once you understand them, then work to try to be understood. Help her understand your perspective. An example conversation starter about this can be something like this. I hate that I avoid sex with you because I feel like I'm not good enough. I hate feeling inadequate. I hate that we depend on my penis to be the only way for you to come. I resent you for insisting that this is the only way you orgasm because then I come too soon and it ruins it for both of us and it's not a great experience. I want to use a vibrator or use oral sex or, fill in the blank with you because I think it would be better for both of us and leave us both satisfied. Or another conversation starter might be something like, I understand you don't like sex toys, but is there a way we can work together for better sex that's enjoyable for both of us that can help us both be something we want to participate in? Because right now, I'm having a difficult time wanting to engage sexually because of all the performance pressure I feel in the way we have sex now. Now, there's other ways to look at this, of course, and I highly recommend coaching if that will help you kind of get past some of these barriers here, or come to our marriage retreat where we can work on these in a very intensive manner. But this is what I have for you that I hope will help you in your marriage around this question. Here's the next question. Should my husband be able to wait while I'm on my period? We have sex once a week, so usually he has to wait a week and a half depending on when we last had sex. Or do I need to give him a hand job while on my period? No oral for us, and I don't like giving hand jobs. They are so messy. Great question. A lot of couples have a lot of different ways to look at how to do sex when she's on her menstrual period. And how you handle that is really up to you. I know couples that don't mind intercourse at all while she's on her menstrual period, or for others is an absolute no way, Jose. I don't want to get there. So it really is up to you in that. But implied in your question is, do I need to give him a hand job? Because we're supposed to have sex once a week, but it's like more than a week because I'm on my period. What's my duty and what's my job here? I'm glad you're kind of thinking in those lines, but I want to expand your thought around that. When you make sex really about a duty to perform or how to get your husband a release that he's somehow owed, it'll torpedo sexual desire in your relationship. It makes sex more about something you do for another person, like to service them, rather than something about building and celebrating a union together. So be very careful about the meanings you're assigning in sex. You don't want it to mean just about service and duty. You want it to be about expression and acceptance and closeness. So maybe a better question for you to ask is, while I'm on my period, how can I express my desire for my husband? The reality is, every one of us really wants to be desired. We want to be wanted. And it takes conscious effort and regular cultivation on our part to desire and choose your spouse, especially after you've been married a while. So I have a question for you. Do you use your period as an excuse not to desire or pursue your husband? Is it like, oh, thank goodness, I'm on my period. I don't have to engage sexually for a little while. Or do you view it as like, man, bummer, I'm on my period. I wish there was something more I could do to pursue and desire my husband if sex isn't an option. Now, see the difference between those two attitudes? People generally can go without sex if they feel desired, because the feeling desired is the feeling they're really after. And the pleasure and connection that comes through sex is how that's expressed. But its desire is really what we're after. We want to be desired. So I challenge you to make this time really about you desiring your husband and choosing him full-heartedly. When you make sex more about love than just a release, beautiful things happen to your marriage. So here are some practical tips that I have for you. Now, if a hand job is something you want to do, and I know it's messy, here are some thoughts to make it a little less messy or a little easier to do. One is use a condom. You can unroll the condom, put some lubricant on the inside of the condom. Make sure you use water-based lubricant for this. And then slide the condom onto him and use the condom. That way, when he does come, it is contained and cleanup is a lot less messy. It's easy. Another is do a hand job in the shower. Or let him give himself a hand job while you hold him close or while you cuddle naked. Like, it doesn't have to always be your hand on him. He can use his hand. I mean, You're together in this act, so it doesn't matter so much whose hand is on whose. Or give him a hand job, but not to orgasm. You stop right before he gets close, and it'll drive him crazy. The bottom line here is make sex not about servicing him, not about his needs, but make it about a deeper meaning of celebrating your union. Sex can be way hotter and way more erotic when it's about both of you ravishing each other and desiring each other and loving each other in that way. Okay, this next question is a little long, but I think that there's a lot of good detail in here to unpack. So let's go for it. Dan, I'm not happy in my marriage. My wife and I cannot communicate, and I feel so helpless and stuck. I'm a 28-year-old man, and I've been married to my wife for 4 years now, and we have a 2-year-old boy and a baby due in 6 months. My wife was bullied by her older sister growing up, and ever since we have been married, she has not been able to talk about anything that involves conflict. Over the course of our marriage, there have been many times where I have felt disrespected and not treated the way I would hope to by my wife. I am not perfect by any means, but it's been 4 years of me trying everything to be open and honest about how I feel and how I want to be treated. I tried everything. I use I statements and try to be gentle and kind. I've listened to hundreds of hours of podcasts, and no matter what I try, when I approach my wife about a behavior that hurts me, my wife ends up crying, clamming up, and she will never bring it up again. I usually end up apologizing for making her upset and then pretend like nothing happened so that we can feel like our marriage is back to normal. Eventually, though, the hurts build up and the cycle will start again with me trying another approach to help her open up about things that have happened to hurt me deeply. I love her so much and just want to be able to be open and honest about everything. I want to feel loved by her and intimately close. I want to feel like I am her highest priority. I want to have a thriving marriage. I am so lonely. What do I do? Please help. Now, this is a really tough place to be in. You're not alone. I talk to other couples where one spouse is very conflict avoidant to a fault, and it causes real difficulties in a relationship. Now, first of all, conflict and marriage go together. It's impossible to have a marriage without some conflict. Conflict is okay. Contention is a different story. But it's like use the metaphor of tectonic plates on the surface of the earth. The crust of the earth is constantly shifting, and you get little tiny earthquakes once in a while, and we can handle that. But when you avoid putting off conflict for a long time, that pressure just mounts and mounts and mounts, and finally you do have a blow up, and that causes like a big earthquake to happen in your relationship. So I highly recommend you both learn how to get really good at addressing conflict in a productive way. One way to learn those skills is in marriage coaching. In marriage coaching, we can bring up those conflict points and help both of you work through it. So it's like going to the lab to practice, or going to the gym, I guess you could say, to practice how to deal with conflict in a constructive way so that you can have a better marriage. I highly recommend to get marriage coaching. If you're looking for something a little more intense in a shorter period of time, I highly recommend coming to our upcoming retreat in St. George, where we can really do a deeper dive on this in your relationship and really help you really move the needle and create momentum in your marriage in this area. Now, a good marriage coach is someone that can help you see your patterns and give you step-by-step actionable plan to change your participation in that pattern. So that's the secret. What is your pattern? Can you identify your pattern? And can you see another way of engaging with that pattern instead of keep participating in it? The pattern I see here in your marriage is that you're resentfully accommodating your wife and coddling her. She hates conflict, and you enable her to continue to put off conflict. You're enabling her conflict avoidant nature and letting that run your marriage instead of letting honesty and truth run your marriage. And you're both paying dearly for it. You can't be intimate because you can't be honest with each other or handle the truth of what's really going on. I like this quote from Dr. David Schnarch. She says, "The truth is liberating, but only when you have the courage to live it." Or as another friend told me in John 7, when Jesus says, "And they shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free," he says it should instead say, "And they shall know the truth, and then it will hurt, but then it will set you free." The reality is, truth does hurt. And can you handle the hurt that comes with the truth? That's really the question in your marriage. Now, I can see why you keep participating in this dynamic with your wife. You hate seeing your wife distance herself whenever there is conflict. You hate seeing her cry or clam up or go into her shell or withdraw because it's super painful for you to see her do those things. And by the way, she's really good at doing those things. She's had lots of practice with her sister, and now 4 years into your marriage, she's had a lot of practice with you. She's very good at it. But you got to see that she's using this as a way to avoid the truth of what's really going on. It's just sweeping things under the rug, and the reality is you hate the way it makes you feel. So your next step is to build up a higher tolerance for the discomfort that comes when you're trying to put more truth on the table and she's trying to withdraw or shut down. I recommend that you learn how to sit with that discomfort without reacting to it. Can you learn how to calm yourself down, as I like to say, calm the heck down, so that you can have a clear mind and address what's really going on between the two of you? Now, of course, you'll have your side of the things to take care of too, and you need to pay attention to that. But can you put more truth on the table by being willing to have a meaningful, productive conflict? And you got to be 100% willing to own everything that's your responsibility to do. But coddling your wife in her avoidance of conflict is not serving your marriage. You both need to learn how to put more truth on the table and being willing to have meaningful, productive conflict around things. And if you don't do that, I don't think your marriage is going to survive. It's really the only way forward. You have to learn how to have productive conflict. And you also need to learn how to respect yourself enough to stop feeling miserable in your own marriage. Here's the last question we'll address today. My husband and I have drastically different sex drives. I would be happy to do it twice a month, which I know isn't healthy, but I'm working on it. And my husband would like to do it multiple times a day if he could. He has had a problem with porn in the past. He has overcome that problem, but he does still masturbate while looking at pictures of me. Is this wrong? Is masturbation a sin? I'm glad you asked this question. You're not alone. And when it comes to masturbation, I'm actually quite neutral. I can see how masturbation in one context can erode the foundation of an intimate relationship and can be really harmful. But I can also see how masturbation can be used to actually build intimacy in a relationship. In my mind, it's neutral. It's kind of like money. People ask, is money good or evil? Well, depends on how you spend it. You can ask yourself, is my husband's masturbation or use of masturbation, is it building connection in our relationship? Is it creating more intimacy and closeness for us? Or is it dividing us as a couple? That would probably be a good test, as it teaches in the New Testament on the Sermon on the Mount. You'll know the tree by its fruits. What's the fruit of this kind of behavior? And is it producing what you really want in your relationship? That being said, I think your question is more so about differing sex drives. And different sex drives are in the majority of marriages. Most couples have different sex drives or different levels of sexual desire. And that can also fluctuate over time. Now, the key is both people need to learn how to work together through these differences. And that's part of the process. It's going to help you grow up in your marriage. You mentioned that you're working on being happy with once or twice a month. And I think what you mean by that is you're trying to have more desire for more than just once or twice a month. But your husband wants it every day. Now, the solution isn't just a compromise, meaning meeting in the middle where, okay, we'll have it once a week now, because in the end, you both still end up with what you don't want, right? You only wanted it once or twice, and he wanted it every day. Even once a week is something that you didn't want, and it's still not enough for him. So meeting people halfway isn't really a great solution. It just leaves you both equally miserable, which isn't good. And then giving in to him doing it every day will just get you resentful, and not having sex at all, isn't great for your marriage either. So just meeting in the middle or compromising here isn't the right way forward. A better solution is to understand where both of you can push yourselves to be more generous lovers. And coaching can help you address this. I'm a specialist at helping people cultivate more sexual desire. That's what I do for a living. And part of the equation is defining what would bring you more joy, more life, that Eros energy that I mentioned earlier in this podcast episode. What will put that smile on your face? What will help you say, heck yeah, I want to do that, or I'd never turn that down? What is it that would really light your fire about being with your husband in that? Can you clearly define what that is? It might be several things. But if you can work to cultivate more of that playful, open, fun energy with your husband, then I think you'll find more room for sexual desire. Being a generous lover isn't just for you, it's for your husband also. He needs to realize that his actions and behaviors have an impact on other people. Whether he likes it or not, there's always an impact that we have on other people. There are forces at work in a relationship that everything we do does affect the person that we're living with. And so he's got his things to work on, you've got your things to work on. But just a caution here, I'm just reading between the lines. If he's making sex about a compulsion or a way to avoid unwanted feelings, then it may not be a good use for him to be using photos of you in masturbation so obsessively or compulsively. The thing is, sex is very effective at temporarily masking undesirable feelings or stress. And that's part of the reason why people like to turn to porn. It's a solution to a problem. I feel bad, or I feel bored, or I feel lonely. I can turn to porn, and for a moment, I feel in control. I feel desired. I feel, really good. I feel powerful in that moment. And they're chasing a feeling by avoiding the real problem. But avoiding the real problem will never solve the source of the problem. So in your husband's case, it might be that he is using sex and masturbation as a way to avoid emotional issues, and he's looking to you also kind of as his stress ball to kind of release and do away with the discomforts of life. If that's the case, then having more sex is just going to reinforce the masking of the problem instead of getting to the solution of the problem for him. So this is an area where coaching can really help both of you dissect this so you can get to the bottom of that. Now, this may not be the case. I'm just reading between the lines here with the little bit of information you have, but I would be willing to talk to you more about this if you're willing to and kind of dive in deeper in these things. Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. Get Your Marriage On is a passion project of mine. It's become more than that. This is my full-time career. I love helping Christian couples have better sex lives. That's what my programs are about. That's what my coaching program is all about. That's why I do this podcast, why you have these apps, why we do the workshops, and why we do our retreats. Please consider signing up for our upcoming retreat. This is where we can do deeper dives into your relationships. It's also really romantic. Also, check out our coaching programs on Next Level on our website. And we've got some really exciting things coming in 2024. We are not sitting on our laurels. We are not slowing down anytime soon. We've got some great things planned ahead. And I look forward to going on this journey with you. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in accelerating growth in your marriage, either sexually, emotionally, or spiritually, I want to invite you to work with me in my affordable coaching program called Next Level. More information about Next Level and my fun and sexy apps for couples are available at getyourmarriageon.com. Please also don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And be sure to tell your married friends. I promise, they will thank you for life. Now go get your marriage on.